Hello. In this video, we're going to be talking about how to take in input for Java, but more specifically, how to take in input using BufferedReader. And the reason we're going to be using BufferedReader is because in higher levels of competitive programming and programming in general, when you're taking in input, it tends to be a little slower when you're using Scanner. So what we need to do is we actually need to use something called BufferedReader to make taking the input as fast as possible. So let's actually get started. So the first thing that you're going to need to do is you're going to need to import, I'm going to import util just because in the rest of your code, you're going to have to use something in the utility class anyway. So we're just going to import .star. And the one important Java class that you're going to need or package is the IO package. So we need to import java.io, which basically just stands for input output. And the star, what that means is that just means import everything that's in IO. Typically, it's not that good to import everything that's in IO, but just for the sake of simplicity, we're going to import it. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a buffered reader. So if you saw in the last video, we used a scanner. And in my case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a buffered reader. And specifically, let's make a buffered reader template so that you can use this on any contest you would like. So the first thing that we're going to do is let's just create a buffered reader here, and it's going to be made globally. So we're just going to say static buffered reader. Oh, whoops, this should be reader. BR is equal to new buffered reader input stream reader. So you want to put a new input stream reader system.in. And it's a little long, but once you get used to it, you type it out a few times, you'll get used to it. And then we're also going to create a tokenizer. And if you don't know what a token is, it's essentially just like a piece of, it's a string that essentially counts between any two white spaces, for example. It's whatever we really define it as, but it's just simply like a word almost. You can think about it like that for now. So let's create a few methods to handle the input of different data types for us. So for example, we might want to take in, let's say, a simple word, for example. So to take in a word, all we need to do is we need to say while st is equal to null, or st doesn't have more tokens. What we're going to do is we're going to try to set st to be a new token. So string tokenizer br.read line. So what we're trying to do here is we're just going to say while there's more tokens, basically, right? While there's more tokens, we're going to continue to take an input. And then otherwise, okay, so let's delete this line here. Otherwise, we need to catch we just need to catch the error, right? So in case there's an error, so catch IO exception E, and for now, let's just not do anything if there is an IO exception. So this is basically our read. This is the same thing as almost scanner sc.next, right? It just reads a word. The next thing that we're going to do is we're just going to quickly create an readint. So this will just read an integer for me. And the reason we created read here is because the way buffered reader works is that it doesn't actually read a single word at a time. It'll read an entire line. So we need to create this read method so that we can create the read int method. And you're going to see exactly why. So we're going to say it's integer.parseInt. So we're going to say, okay, look at a string and take the integer out of that string. That's essentially what we're doing. And inside, we're going to call the read method, which reads a single word. A word could be a number, a string, anything. As long as it's like separated by spaces or at the beginning of a string or the end. We're also going to create a read long. And we're going to say return long.parseLong. And of course, inside, we're going to parse the read. And then we're going to create a read double, for example. And we might just say return double.parseDouble the read, right? So these are some of the data types that we might use when we're creating our input readers. So that's pretty much it for the template. Now let's look at the question. So given n numbers on separate lines, find their sum. Well, this is really simple as well. So we just take in an integer, and the way we use this is we say read, int. We're calling the method in that case, and it's going to return a string kind of. So it's going to return a parsed string of an integer. So then basically what we need to do is we need to loop 5 times and take in the input. So let's quickly do that. So we're going to say int a is equal to read int. Let's create a sum variable. We're going to say sum plus equals a, and then system.out.println the sum. So there's that. Let's quickly run the code to see if it works. Oh, let's see. Seems like we didn't return something. So essentially for the read method, we actually do need to return something, and the thing we return is simply the next token. So you might not be familiar with all of this, but if you are interested, make sure to search it up on your own free time, do some investigation. But in general, this is how you do the read method, which is probably the most important method in the BufferedReader class that you have to make yourself. So let's quickly run this. Let's save this first. Let's compile it. Okay, so the sample input we have is 5, 1, 2, -1, 4, and then 6. And we get a total sum of 12. And let's see, does that work? Yep, that looks perfectly fine to me. Okay, so the next thing that we have is, let's see, given n numbers on the same line, find their sum. So this is the exact same thing. Because of the way we did this, we're using a read method in this case, so it even separates it by spaces. So let's compile it once again. Actually, we don't even need to compile it. We can just run the program, and we can see that it works perfectly fine. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is we also need to, let's see, given an n by m matrix of numbers, find their sum. So we're going to have this matrix here, n by m. Here's the matrix. We want to find the sum of all the numbers. So the way we're going to do this, let's see, let's delete all of this. Okay. We're going to create a sum variable here. And essentially what we're going to do is let's create a 2D array. That's n by m. So here we also need to take in the integer m. The next thing that we're going to do is we're just going to loop through n by m times. And we're just going to say array ij is equal to read int. Then all I need to do is we can even combine them. We can even just say sum plus equals array ij. And then finally, print out our sum like so. Okay, so let's see. This is the sample input that we were given. Let's compile the code. Okay, seems like there's no issues. And we're just going to take in the sample input here. And our total sum is 158, which seems about correct. Okay, the next thing we have is string on a full line. So given a sentence, print how many spaces there are. And this is actually pretty simple because actually we already know the method to read an entire line, which is br.readLine. Seems pretty intuitive. So let's try it out. So we're going to have int sum here. And we obviously don't need this anymore. So we're going to say this is equal to br.readLine. Obviously, if you want to create a readLine method, you could do that as well. And then all we need to do is loop through all the characters. So we're going to say if s.char@I is equal to a space, then we're going to say sum plus plus. Okay. And then all we need to do here is print out the sum. Okay, so let's save it. Run the program. Oh, let's see. Must be caught in that. Okay, yeah. So one more thing that you need to do when you're using BufferedReader in this case is you need to throw an IO exception. And the reason you need to do this is if you don't include it, you're going to get some errors. And that's not exactly what we want here. So let's recompile it. And now it should work. So let's see how many spaces are in the sentence. Hello, welcome to Dual-Way Education. So let's see. So we see exactly there are 4, which is 1, 2, 3, and 4. The last thing that we have is welcome to, or given n words, count how many are exactly hello. So in this case, we have 6 words, and then we want to take in the input like so. So the way we're going to do that is let's just delete all of this. Let's create a sum variable, and we're given n words, right? So first we need to take in the input for the integer n, and then loop a bunch of times, specifically n times. And we're going to take in a word, so string s is equal to read. And we can pretty much just say, well, if s dot equals hello, then what we're going to do is we're going to increase the sum by 1. So that's just an example of how to increase an integer by 1 besides using plus plus. Okay, so hopefully this works. So we're given 6 words. Hello, welcome to Dual-Way Education. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And let's just do one more word, like hello. And you can see that we had exactly 2 hellos in our input, and therefore it gave us 2. So that's pretty much it for BufferedReader. I will show the code for the templates on the screen here and here. And of course, if you're using BufferedReader on the main method itself, make sure you throw the IO as exception. Otherwise, you're going to get an error like I did earlier. And that's pretty much it.